Hey everybody, welcome to Combat Japan. I'm your host Andres Vergara. Today we're going to be recapping the RIZIN Landmark 15 event, which just took place in the Hiroshima Green Arena in Hiroshima, Japan. And our main event here was the Bantamweight Championship title fight between defending champion Danny Sabatello fighting against challenger Jinosuke Kashimura, who happens to be the Deep MMA Bantamweight champion. Deep is a smaller regional promotion in Japan, with RIZIN being the premier MMA promotion. But this was a hell of a fight, a hell of an event, actually. There were a lot of finishes, and we're going to break that down fight by fight. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to start with the main card. We're going to start at the top, talk about each fight, and go from there. All right, let's get started. One moment here. All right, so beginning with our main event here with the Bantamweight Championship between Danny Sabatello and Jinosuke Kashimura. As I mentioned before, Jinosuke Kashimura is the champion over at Deep. He comes to us on a 4-fight win streak, and I believe he's 12-5 coming into this bout. Danny Sabatello is also on a 4-fight win streak. He is 18-4 in 1-no contest. All right, so let's dive right in. A quick criticism of Danny Sabatello's style is that he kind of wrestles people to decisions and doesn't really look for a finish. And in fact, they revealed that in the behind the scenes series that they shoot, it's called RIZIN Confessions. You can watch it on YouTube for free. They revealed that RIZIN president Sakakibara asked Danny Sabatello to finish his next fight, basically just criticizing like, hey, you need to be more exciting for the next fight. I want you to get a finish. And this is something that he's not only been hearing, from the fans, but it's like being told to him by the actual head of the promotion. So Danny Sabatello came into this with quite a lot of pressure to perform and not get another one of those boring decisions where he's just wrestling somebody for 3 minutes. On the other hand, Jinosuke Kashimura, he's a BJJ phenom. He is extremely good at grappling. If you look at all his wins, I believe 10 out of his 12 wins are by submission. Other than his submission grappling, he doesn't have like a very advanced striking game or anything like that. But this was a really interesting matchup to see. So starting on round 1, we had Danny Sabatello come out, and we got a glimpse of K1 Sabatello. This is one of the few fights in which he chose to keep it on the feet. Normally, he's constantly looking for a way to take you down and give you some ground and pound, but he knew how dangerous Kashimura was on the ground. And then for Kashimura's game plan, I believe the commentary said that maybe he was looking for some sort of leg lock or something that perhaps is more jiu-jitsu heavy, more so than something you'd see training MMA exclusively. And, if anybody could pull that off, Kashimura would be that kind of guy, right? He's extremely gifted at grappling, trains with Aoki. He really knows what he's doing on the ground. One of the things I noticed, and I think I mentioned this in my preview of this card, is that Kashimura's takedowns really could use some work. I feel like he doesn't really set them up well at all. He will just kind of dive for the legs without any setup, and a lot of the time that results in people sprawling on him or kind of stuffing it. But as I was watching the fight, and I believe in the RIZIN Confessions video, he said something like along the lines of, I wish Danny Sabatello would just try and take me down, because then I'll just sweep him, right? And as I was watching that, it dawned on me, oh, he doesn't care whether the takedown works or not. He's just looking for a connection so that he can sweep, right? So in a weird way, Jinosuke, I feel like he will settle for like a bad takedown, knowing that he might get sprawled on, or knowing that it might not go his way. But as long as he has that connection, and if he ends up on bottom, he's going to find a way to either attack the legs, invert somehow, or just get some sort of sweep and then kind of implement his game, right? Because he's not a striker. So I that's just something that dawned on me as I was watching. I was like, why is he choosing to shoot at that time when clearly it wasn't going to work? And I think it's because he just wanted any sort of connection so that he could just implement the ground game, which is an interesting approach for sure. Yeah, going back to Sabatello, I believe in round 1 he actually got caught in a triangle attempt from Kashimura and was able to get out of that from open guard, or from closed guard rather, and just implemented ground and pound for a lot of that round. But I think he quickly realized that there was danger on the ground with Kashimura. Kashimura tried for some leg entanglements throughout the fight. I think maybe 2 or 3 times. And I don't think Danny really liked that. I believe in round 2, Kashimura got a back take, but it was like upside down. So like he was holding on to, like usually you hold on to somebody's torso and neck. He was holding on to Danny's like hips, and like his legs were wrapped around his shoulders. So it was like a reverse back mount or something. But essentially Danny was like, okay, you know what? I'm just going to keep this on the feet. And that was my joke earlier about K1 Sabatello, because both of these guys are not really like great strikers by any means, but they're also, not entirely deficient either. I think Danny was throwing with a lot of intent and was just trying to get the best on the feet. And I think he did rock him at least once every round. I know at the end of round 1, he did drop Kashimura with a punch. And I feel like this was kind of the tail of the fight, at least for the first 2 rounds. And then going on to round 3, Danny Sabatello kind of, I think, feeling the pressure to finish, not just from Sakakibara, but also from the fans and from, he probably reads what people are saying about him. Just kind of really turns it on and starts to swing a little bit more wild. Doesn't accept any ground position. I think at some point he just stood up and Kashimura was like, no, you come to me. And he was like, nope, nope, stand up. So we get a pretty crazy exchange between the two in which Danny is kind of swinging wildly. And Danny throws a right hook, which just lands flush on Kashimura, and it just completely puts him out. Kashimura just drops like a stiff board and just hits the canvas, so the back of his head also hit the floor, and they immediately stopped the fight in round 3. So yeah, Danny Sabatello was able to deliver the finish that he'd promised. He gets a KO. It's his first KO finish in RIZIN. Shortly after, he called out Inoue again, the former bantamweight champion. He said, "I'm not done with you," which is it would be an interesting rematch for sure. But I think a lot of people, including myself, and I think Damian Brown would really like to see a Tilinov-Sabatello matchup, and we'll get to that fight here in a second. So anyway, shout out to the champ, Danny Sabatello. He delivered a finish, and obviously Kashimura did a great job. He just got caught, man. It's kind of the name of the game in MMA. So, all right, moving on to the co-main event. All right, so we have a 145-pound bout between Karshiga Daubek and Kyohei Hagiwara. In my preview to this card, I felt like this was a bit of a kind of a mismatch in terms of Daubek winning for sure, and that's kind of what we saw. This was a round 1 finish where Daubek knocked out Kyohei Hagiwara. It is worth mentioning, though, that prior to that knockout, I actually gave round 1 to Hagiwara. As I was taking my notes, I was thinking, you know what, this might be a Hagiwara round. He was a lot more active, a lot. Daubek really took his time. He didn't do any wrestling, which I expected him to do, because Hagiwara is honestly a liability on the ground. If you look at all his losses, I mean, it's just basically all submissions, like triangles and arm bars and stuff like that. His record's not great. He's 9-12, 7 submission losses, right? And you have Daubek, who's a national boxing champion, lots of striking experience, but he also has trained grappling quite a bit, and we saw that in his last fight, which ended in a no contest due to an eye poke. But he was kind of like shutting down basically his opponent's striking via grappling, right? So you have somebody that's a lot more well-rounded, has a ton of experience. He's 18-3. And before the no contest, he was coming off of 4 wins. So I had picked Daubek to win this, which he did. But prior to winning, he was looking very defensive and not really pushing the pace. Kind of, I think, just feeling out Hagiwara. Another thing that was a little odd, Hagiwara was constantly circling toward Daubek's strong side, and I think Damian Brown commented on this. Normally you kind of circle away from somebody's power hand. So if I have a regular stance with my left hand forward and my right hand back, this is my power hand. So you're gonna want to circle away from this punch, right? Because this carries all the power. I have all my weight behind it. I have the hips, right? And Hagiwara was circling toward Daubek's power hand the entire time. As far as the finish there, after that feel-out process, they got into an exchange, and Daubek, I believe, threw an overhand left, which completely just obliterated Hagiwara, and it was just an immediate KO. Very, very impressive win from Daubek. He chose to basically strike with a striker, right? So I thought he was going to choose wrestling to kind of shut him down, but nope, he outstruck the striker and put him away in incredible fashion. So, and just worth mentioning, I'm reviewing this against the picks I did in my preview. So far, I picked Sabatello to win. I said by decision, but he got a knockout. And I also picked Daubek to win. So I'm 2 for 2 so far. So that was our co-main event. Moving on to the next fight down the card. All right, so here we have our silver medalist in Greco-Roman wrestling in the Olympics, Shinobu Ota, versus Rajabali Shadulayev's training partner, Erzbek Tilinov. So Shadulayev is the 145-pound champ in RIZIN. He's an undefeated phenom. I can't say this enough. Go check him out, Shadullayev. It's like Shay, Shayddullaev. Highlights. This guy is a problem, dude. He just signed actually with the same management company as Habib and Justin Gaethje and all those guys. So presumably he will be making the jump over to the UFC once his RIZIN contract ends. But you know, consolation price, maybe we get Tilinov as a Shayddullaev light or or something like that. So Tilinov, he comes into this. This is his RIZIN debut. He is 7-1 as a professional. He's coming off of a 5-5 win streak. And did I mention this is 135 pounds? So this is the same. Yeah, I did, because we talked about Sabatello versus Tilinov potentially. And then we have Ota, who's you know, got a ton of accolades in combat. I mean, obviously winning the Olympics is a huge deal, or silver medaling rather. But he hasn't done so well in MMA. Leading up to this, I did pick Tilinov to win. Just watching his fighting footage prior to this, man, I thought he was just going to walk through him. And we'll get into kind of the round by round, but it was a very dominant win here. Back to Ota. So he is 8-5 so far, but the record doesn't tell the full story, right? He's fought a lot of good guys. He's actually lost to the champ, Danny Sabatello, and he's taken on some other big names in RIZIN. But alas, Tilinov proved to be a little bit too much for him in this fight. So let's start with round one. So round one didn't really tell us anything definitively. So right off the bat, Ota grabs Tilinov's leg, which leads to a body lock and leads him to press Tilinov up against the cage. Whenever this kind of stuff happens, you can shave off like 2 minutes off the round. I feel like whenever, you know, somebody just clinches and presses against the cage and they throw these small shots, it's just I think it's a way to control the opponent, but very rarely do we see like crazy finishes from there. Which actually we did see that in this card. But, you know, I would say that a lot of the time it's just a way to kind of control your opponent and not really do much else. But anyway, so Ota pushed him against the fence, and then Tilinov was able to reverse and just do the same thing back to him. Toward the end of the round, I believe Ota jumped a guillotine attempt. He pulled a Dustin Poirier. It's going to be bad. He jumped a gilly. And actually, it looked pretty tight, I think. But Tilinov is a very experienced grappler. He's training with Shayddullaev, so he was just able to get out of that. And then they had some exchanges on the feet. And on the feet, Tilinov looked a lot more experienced and was able to get the better of the exchanges there. Also, he looked to be more aggressive, in my opinion, on the feet. And that was kind of all she wrote for round one. So moving on to round two. All right, so round two, we get a lot of the same kind of make contact, push him against the fence, right? So now you're in the clinch. Ota is pressing Tilinov against the cage, and Tilinov was throwing some knees, kind of separating and trying to throw some knees to the torso of Ota. And one of those knees was a little bit low, which kind of grazed the cup of Ota. So they had an official timeout to kind of recover from a groin strike. The commentary team was saying that like it wasn't really a bad groin strike, if anything, like it was just a graze. But Ota certainly took his time to kind of milk the clock and kind of recover a little bit. I think he probably took like at least a 2 to 3 minute break before starting back up. But that rest really served Ota well, because he immediately shot and was able to take down Tilinov. Tilinov was able to get back up though. He was very good at neutralizing the wrestling of Ota. He gets up, there's a striking exchange, and he just catches Ota with I think he throws a hook, then a cross, and then a knee. So he hurts him with a hook cross. Ota kind of turtles up a little bit, and then Tilinov just runs at him and throws a knee right up against the cage and just hits Ota in the face. Ota drops, and without defending, the referee called a TKO stoppage. And it was just brutal to see, man. Those knees to the face are just something else, man. But yeah, Tilinov looked very, very good. So he moves up to 8-1, passes his RIZIN test with flying colors, I would say. And this is when Damian Brown and also myself were thinking, like, okay, so he was able to shut down the wrestling from Ota. What would that look like against somebody like Sabatello, right? So I know we just saw K1 Sabatello keep it on the feet, but I think that Tilinov here probably has his number on the feet. So now you have Sabatello relying on his wrestling again. But Tilinov seems to have extremely, extremely good wrestling as well, especially defensive wrestling. So like from what we saw in this fight. So if he's able to get back up every time Sabatello takes him down, I think this would be a hell of a fight. So maybe a little too early to go for a title at this point, but definitely something that could happen in the next year or so. I think Sabatello said he wants to be back in September, so that he also wants to be busy. So anyway, great fight, and I did pick Tilanov to win this one as well. So thus far, I am 3 for 3. All right, moving on to the next fight here. All right, so we have a 125-pound bout between Hiroya and Ersan Yamamoto. Hiroya comes into this bout at 11-15 in 1-0 contest. Ersan Yamamoto comes into this at 6-8, winning his last bout against Yuki Ito, I believe, in the flyweight tournament that happened last year for the reserve spot in that Grand Prix. And on this one, I had picked Yamamoto to win. I thought that he would just be more aggressive and do a lot of Ersan Yamamoto things. And what I mean by that is that he's very aggressive, so he'll come right at you. He will grab a body lock or shoot for the legs and just take you down or press you up against the fence, I guess in this case, and just beat the living hell out of you. Just start ground and pounding. He's not like somebody like Kashimura that might look to choke you out or, do some sort of arm lock. He's just going to wrestle you and just beat the hell out of you for 3 rounds. And Hiroya, on the other hand, I feel like he's been a lot more reactive and kind of defensive from everything I've seen. And if you look at like his losses, they're like mostly all like decisions. So like whenever he wins, it's by stoppage mostly. So in my preview video, I picked Hiroya to only win if it's by stoppage. If it goes to decision, Hiroya will lose. And that's exactly what we saw here. This was a 3-round fight. Really, I feel like I kind of just said what happened in the entire fight, right? So Hiroya came out. Yeah, I think in round 1, Hiroya jumped a guillotine. He did a Dustin Poirier as well, and just really held on to it. And you can see in the replay, or even just live, you can see that it's not really deep. Like when he's holding Ersan's head here, you can see Ersan's ear and chin like on the side of Hiroya's lat. So like he wasn't here, he was already like halfway out, but he held on to that and just basically burned his arms out for like 40 seconds or so, giving Ersan exactly what he wants, which is to be on top of you. So once he let go of that, he was in full guard. Ersan was able to kind of deliver some ground and pound. But to Hiroya's credit, he was able to get right back up, and Ersan was able to maintain control with a body lock and press him up against the fence and just kind of go from there. Second round, much of the same, right? So you had Ersan kind of controlling, pushing him against the fence, getting in that clinch and just punching, hitting, kneeing. Hiroya did get a couple reversals as well. But again, I believe that Ersan was on the front foot, kind of pushing the pace the whole time, and Hiroya was kind of reacting and getting, some reversals here and there. But if you were to look at control, aggression, that would all lean toward Yamamoto, in my opinion. In fact, I think at the very end of the second round, when Hiroya reversed and was pressing Ersan against the cage, the referee stopped them for like being inactive and just separated them. So just not super exciting there. And I think Ersan at the very end tried to do like a spinning back elbow, which didn't land, and that was it for round 2. For round 3, we saw more aggression from Hiroya. I think there were some flurries and some combinations that he threw with like real intent. Ersan ended up catching him with a body lock, which led to a really big slam. But aside from that, I think Hiroya was able to just get right back up. And I think in round 3, Hiroya ended up with a back take, which was very dominant. But Ersan was able to get out. Ersan threw some more spinning back elbows. He ended up getting cut like right beneath the eye, so it was a pretty nasty cut. But honestly, I think I gave round 3 to Hiroya. But at that point, he was already down 2 rounds. So as predicted, he ends up losing via decision to Ersan Yamamoto. But it was a good fight. It was actually very competitive. But I think Ersan just kind of overpowered him. All right, so moving on to our next fight down the card. All right, so we have a 155-pound match here, lightweight, between Johnny Case and the veteran, and Tenya, who's 5-3 coming into this match. And Johnny was like, he's 29-10, so he's got in 1-0 contest. So what's that? There 30 fights? No, 40 fights. Yeah, geez. On this one, I had picked Johnny Case to win. I just felt like he's just a way more well-rounded fighter. He trains at Extreme Couture. He's had experience boxing, just kind of a well-rounded, proven, seasoned martial artist. Whereas Tenya is, pretty early in his career, 5-3. I haven't seen anything that indicates that he's extremely well-rounded. I know he's a good scrapper for sure. He's got power. But one thing I wanted to mention on this fight, man, when they walked out, their height difference was listed as 1 inch. So Johnny Case was 5'10", Tenya was 5'11", but god damn, he looked big, Tenya. And that's funny because both of these guys, their last fights, they come from weight misses. And RIZIN kind of has a history of like if you miss weight and if you miss weight, you'll kind of be fighting each other. Worth mentioning, Tenya's weight miss was like huge. It was like 9 or 10 pounds, whereas Johnny's, I don't think it was anywhere near that much. But anyway, I predicted Johnny to win this fight as well. And this one was quick. This was a round one finish. So let's get started. So round one, we had a bit of a feeling out process. They were both kind of, kickboxing, basically just kind of establishing a pace. Tenya came just lumbering and just kind of throwing some good combinations. And Johnny was kind of just seeing what he could get, kind of feeling out the timing. And then right in round one, actually, in Tenya's corner, they were saying, hey, watch out for his uppercut because Johnny's is a really good uppercut. And like, 20 seconds after they said that, Johnny just throws a rear uppercut just down the middle and completely rocks Tenya. He goes down, and then Johnny just pounces on him and just relentless ground and pound, just brutalizing Tenya until the ref calls it off via TKO. I mean, it looked obviously like a real finish, right? Like, whenever you see somebody just jump on somebody and just keep striking until they stop it. But I didn't realize the severity of it until they actually pulled away and showed Tenya. He was bloodied the hell up, man. It was like pretty gruesome to see. But congrats to Johnny Case, winning in impressive fashion in round one. It's good to see him do well. I think he's been out for over a year, so awesome stuff from him. All right, moving on. All right, so we have our first, actually second, because I'm going backwards, but this is our one of our matches in the super atom weight invisible tournament that they're doing. So basically, they're taking 8 super atom weights and they're facing off against each other, but it's not an official bracket where like this winner faces this winner. They're just kind of picking and seeing who they think is the most impressive, and they're going to be fighting for the title on New Year's Eve, the vacant title that Seika Izawa held, that she had to vacate because she is pregnant and is having a child. Worth mentioning, I think I've said this before, but at least half of the women, or close to half of the women in this invisible tournament, have already lost to Seika Izawa. Debatably, Siwoo Park lost. Some people think she won, but anyway, back to this matchup. So this is actually, in addition to being part of this tournament, to see who gets to fight for the belt, this is actually a rematch. And I didn't mention this in my last video. I just complete oversight. But Yiji Lee, actually from Korea, beat Saori Oshima in, I forget which promotion it was. But Saori Oshima is a Japanese judo specialist. She is one of the people that has lost to Seika Izawa, but she's coming for revenge, right? So this is one where she came in as the favorite over Yiji Lee. So a quick background on Yiji Lee. So she is 7-8 coming into this, in Oshima's 16-7. This one was a quick one. So let me paint a picture here. Round starts, they feel each other out a little bit. They make a connection, and then Saori Oshima sets up this beautiful judo throw, throws Yiji Lee over her hip. Yiji Lee is able to catch herself and immediately reverse onto Saori Oshima by grabbing a body lock. And at this point, you're thinking, oh shit, Oshima's in trouble, right? And Oshima gets picked up, taken down to the mat, and immediately she inverts, dives in for the legs, and executes like the most beautiful knee bar I've seen, and immediately taps out Yiji Lee via knee bar. And the whole fight was maybe less than 30 seconds. It was just a clean, well executed knee bar off of a scramble after a beautiful judo throw. I was super impressed. In terms of like this invisible tournament thing that they're talking about, they're obviously going to pick people who get finishes over people who don't. And this is a great, exciting way to kind of punch your ticket to that opportunity for Saori Oshima. So nothing else to say here. I did pick Oshima to win. So I'm freaking killing it, dude. I'm just predicting everything right. I'm just kidding. I didn't put any money on this. I don't even know where to do that. Like, is there a sports book in the US where you can bet RIZIN? I don't know. I just like picking and seeing if I'm right or not. But so far, so good. All right, moving on. Okay. So this was the actual first fight of the Invisible Tournament between Mori Suda and Siwoo Park. As I mentioned before, Siwoo Park has fought Seika Izawa, and she gave her all that she could handle. In fact, a lot of people think it was a bit of a robbery. It was a split decision win for Izawa, who's undefeated. But yeah, Siwoo Park came into this against Mori Suda. She's only 21 years old, actually, and Siwoo Park is 35, so my age. And but Moeri Suda is 15-7. She's a grappling specialist, much like our main event, Kashimura. She specializes in jiu-jitsu. She so much so that she'll like jump guard just to like get into entanglements. And we've seen that she's beat some really good people like Noel, who's also going to be fighting in this Invisible Tournament. She'll just be fighting in next month's card. So this fight wasn't nearly as exciting as the Oshima finish that we just talked about. In fact, it was it was a little bit boring actually. It went all 3 rounds, so it went to a decision here. But this was a classic striking versus grappler affair. So Moeri didn't really want to have anything to do on the feet, so she kept looking for some ways to engage. And Siwoo Park wanted none of the ground, so she kept like basically escaping any sort of takedown attempt or entanglement. One cool thing that happened, I think it was in round 1, Mori Suda was able to catch to do a double leg takedown, but she ended up basically hoisting Siwoo Park over her shoulder and did a Marab style takedown where she walked across the cage and was able to dump her. But that's all. That was a cool moment, but like Siwoo Park was able to get right back up. And obviously Siwoo Park had the better of the exchanges on the feet. And I think she dropped Moeri probably at least every round, but certainly at the end of the first round, she dropped her with a nice straight punch. One thing that was interesting is the refs were really harping on Siwoo Park pointing her fingers out. Just the recent eye poke fiasco that's been happening all over MMA. They were really on her case about it. They were like, hey, you got to keep your fingers like this. And so much so that she ended up getting a really stern warning in round 1. And I think in round 2, she actually got a yellow card and a point deduction for not following through with the warning. So they're taking that very seriously. I think it was Dalbeck that, ended up having to pull out of a fight or mid-fight because of an eye poke. And the RIZIN gloves are a little bit better designed than, actually a lot better designed than the UFC ones. They actually kind of curve your hands naturally, whereas the UFC ones kind of force them open. So eye pokes haven't historically been a huge problem for RIZIN, but that's not to say that they never happened. They have happened. I've seen it. And I think they're just really on top of it, because I think officiating's just been on the news quite a bit. Cue Alex Pereira, Herb Dean quote. I think people are just upset with officials, but yeah, they were very on top of this one. But anyway, moving back to the fight, Moeri kept basically just diving for a leg or some sort of body lock. Siwoo Park kept escaping. Whenever Moeri would make contact and as Siwoo would escape, she would always kind of hold on to a leg. And I think she was trying to do some sort of leg entanglement, some sort of heel hook, but she was never able to hold her. She would just clear the knee line, and she, as in Siwoo Park, and would just escape. So this ended up being kind of just a back and forth of that. And then it went to the judges' scorecards, and we had a win for Siwoo Park, despite her a point deduction for the yellow card for keeping her fingers pointed at her opponent. So not much else to say on that one. And this one is the first one I got wrong in reverse order. So I had picked Moeri Suda to win this via submission, but alas, we can't all be perfect. All right, next fight. All right, so we had a battle of the unks at 140-pound catchweight between Shoji and Genji Umeno. Shoji came into this with a 4-fight loss streak. He's coming into this at 43. He hasn't won in like the broadcast said like 1,500 days. However many years that is, that's a long amount of time. And then we have Genji Umeno, who is 37. So not really full unk, but still, getting up there. And he is 2-1 in MMA, but he does have extensive Muay Thai experience. He's a very accomplished striker. And I've seen him at least employ defensive grappling before in other fights. So coming into this one, I was going with Genji Umeno to win, and that's not what happened. So this one went all 3 rounds as well. We had Shoji really leverage his grappling. So Shoji has never actually won a fight by submission, but God, he got real close. So he's fighting basically a kickboxer or Muay Thai fighter, and he really relied on that. So starting in round one, Umeno starts pretty busy. He's getting the best of him in the feet. They clinch up. Shoji pushes him against the cage, and then they end up in a clinch. At which point, I think right before the takedown, Genji was throwing some Muay Thai knees, like the plum type thing. And Shoji just completely drops to his knees, scoops the legs, and just takes him down. And then that was kind of it for the round. So like he takes him down. He actually passed his guard. I think he got into side control and just beat the hell out of Genji and maintained control the entire time. Round two, immediate takedown from Shoji. He just bell rings, takedown. At this point, you can tell that Genji's getting a little tired, right? So I mentioned before that Genji Umeno has defensive grappling, but in this case, it was just nowhere to be found. I don't know if he was gassed or what, but basically he was just underneath the whole time. He couldn't really do anything with the grappling. So much so that Shoji ended up getting a back take. He passed his guard fairly easily. And I think toward the end of the round, he did this really cool thing where he had like a scissor choke on Genji's neck. So his legs were like kind of like this, and he was like straightening them out across Genji's neck, simultaneously holding a Kimura grip on Genji's arms and just trying to finish that way. Genji was able to survive that, but I love seeing like two submissions at once. I think that's a really cool thing. But yeah, then we go to round three, in which Shoji ended up pulling guard, getting down to the bottom. He ends up just out grappling Genji. I think Genji was able to get up and had some exchanges where he was just completely gassed at this point. So like maybe if he was fresh, he would have been able to get something out of that exchange. But Shoji just took him down again and ended up taking his back. And then Shoji ended up on top, mounted, and he went from a head and arm choke. And this was in maybe like the last 20 seconds of the fight. And keep in mind, this guy's never won by submission before, and he was this close to finishing him. He was just squeezing, and he was sprawled out, and he was on the side, and he was driving the shoulder into the neck, and he got saved by the bell. Like they had to let go, and you could see Genji's face was like just totally red, basically just on the verge of going out. But the man Shoji, he turns back the clock, gets his first win in over 1,500 days, and I get my pick wrong once again. But that was a hell of a fight. I did not see that coming. I just didn't think that the 43-year-old guy that's never won by submission would get the better of the younger gentleman and then just almost finish him via choke. So that was really cool. All right, next. All right, we have a 145-pound match between Hiroaki Suzuki and Hyuga Miyagawa. This one, I had picked Miyagawa to win. I just felt like he had more straight punches that would land quicker, and he would probably get the best of the striking. Whereas Suzuki, I feel like he throws a lot of haymakers, which are a lot more powerful, but also slower. And the reason I mentioned that is because in round one, that's exactly what happened in my opinion. So Hyuga was able to kind of get the better of the striking and actually drop Suzuki, but upon replay, you saw that it was a head clash that dropped him. But anyway, he was just landing straight punches, jab cross, and was able to basically put it on Suzuki early on, but Suzuki was able to withstand the onslaught, able to get up and just kind of grapple and press him against the cage, burn several minutes doing that. And that's kind of it for round one. I think they separated at the end and they had a bit of a back and forth on the feet, but essentially Hyuga was able to get the best of him on the feet right off the bat, put on the pace. Suzuki survived and then pressed him against the cage. And that was all she wrote for round one. Round two, however, same exact thing. Hyuga was able to kind of do a flurry, catch him with some strikes. Suzuki is able to survive and pushes Miyagawa against the fence again. And earlier I was talking about how like people stall, like basically, oh, he's pushing against the fence, take out 2 minutes of the round because nothing's going to happen. This being the exception I was talking about. So Suzuki ends up pressing against the cage, doing that kind of dirty boxing, clinch stuff, elbows. And one of these elbows / forearms, just, he's pushing against the cage and just doing this. And he gets Miyagawa the forearm so clean that it drops Miyagawa straight down. It totally rocks him. And Miyagawa comes down, and then Suzuki just capitalizes and just ends up getting on top and just ground and pound, striking with knees, elbows, hammer fists up against the cage. And that's always, really shitty for the person getting hit because you're, getting the hit to the face and then the cage on the back of the head. So TKO finish for Suzuki there. I had picked Miyagawa on this one, and I was wrong. So congrats to Suzuki. It was actually a really cool finish. So moving on. All right, so we have the rare welterweight match, 170-pound match in RIZIN. I say this is rare because normally people are just smaller in that part of the world. And to be a 170-pound fighter, you basically have to be pretty big, right? So like, probably walk around close to 200 pounds and you cut down to 170. So anyway, I would say neither of these guys are actual 170ers. They probably are just bigger than they should be lightweights. But we had Shinji Sasaki versus Yota Rice Hayashi. Shinji comes into this at the age of 46. He's been around for a long time. He's 20 and 14. And Hayashi is 12 and 9, and he's the Grachan champion for welterweight. And I think another weight class. They were mentioning in the broadcast he's a dual champion over Grachan. But this is his RIZIN debut, I believe. He's 33 years old. This fight was weird, man. In the lead up to this, I did pick Hayashi to win, and particularly because Shinji doesn't really do any striking. Like he will literally keep his hands down here and kind of maybe do that and then just dive for the legs. He is a jiu-jitsu expert, but yeah, he's had 11 of his 20 finishes are by submission, and that's kind of like his whole game, right? So he's a little bit deficient elsewhere. Whereas Hayashi, I don't think he's an expert at anything, but at least he can strike, right? But from what we saw here, I think, yeah, Hayashi rocked him a few times. He was getting the best of the exchanges on the feet. But dude, Hayashi was like totally overcommitting and just kind of like throwing these crazy haymakers that weren't landing and just kind of gassing himself out. Also, like his punches had no defense whatsoever. I mean, like you're not always going to be extremely defensive when you're fighting, right? You can't be worried about getting hurt the entire time, but maybe some basic, something like that. But he's just like his arms are like out here, right? So he's like, huh, huh. And I think that's just a byproduct of generating force and not really caring if you get tagged back. But it just looked a little sloppy to me. But anyway, in round one, Shinji ended up pulling guard. No surprise there. And I think he was trying to set up a Gogo Plata, which he wasn't able to do. And then the time ran out. Round two, however, was super weird, man. This was like nobody did anything. So the commentary was really harping on Sasaki for like kind of just bouncing on his feet, not doing anything. But Hayashi wasn't doing much either, right? And he's the fresher of the two. He's the one that should be doing something on the feet. And he was throwing a few, jabs here and there. But honestly, I feel like they both took that round off, and it was just kind of super boring to watch. Round three, however, a lot more of the same, but they get no between round two and round three, the referee gave them each a warning for being timid. And they're like, hey, you can't be doing that. So they both turned it on a little bit in round three. We end up with I forget if Sasaki ended up pulling guard or was taken down. Either way, he ends up going for like a buggy choke, which is you don't rarely ever see, and especially in MMA. But Yota is able to get out, and he lands a really, really big knee on Sasaki's face and ends up on top of him, basically just like kneeling on top of Sasaki against the cage. I feel like we've seen a lot of that in this card, just like knees to the face up against the cage. But these were so brutal, man. I think he really broke his nose like crazy. Like the bridge of his nose was completely flat. So it was like I audibly went like, oh my God. Because Hayashi hit him with knees to the face like 2 or 3 times before they stopped it. And it was fucking brutal, dude. So we get a late round 3 stoppage for the 33-year-old Yota Rice Hayashi. And that was my pick as well. So I got that one right. But God, I hope Sasaki can heal from that quickly, because that looked just fucking awful. All right, next. All right, so here we have a 125-pound match between Hinotori, the Firebird, versus the Korea's Jae-Hoon Lee. This was a fight that wasn't originally announced. What happened, it was going to be Tatsuki Shinotsuka, who is 1-1 in MMA. He has a bunch of kickboxing experience, versus Jae-Hoon Lee, who has more MMA experience. He's 3-1 coming into this fight. Coming into this, I had picked Jae Hoon Lee to win, but given that his opponent dropped out at the last moment due to injury, my pick is null and void. But coming into this, well, I think it was like 3 days notice. Hinotori comes into this, and he happens to be a wrestler. So Shinotsuka is primarily a striker. So the entire camp, Jae Hoon Lee was preparing for a striker, and then he ends up getting a very dominant wrestler instead. So let's talk about this match real quick. So Hinotori comes out dressed as Mario. I don't know what the hell that was about. And like his teammates, like his corner, one was Bowser, I think, one was Yoshi, and one was Luigi. And they kept those costumes on the whole time. So that's the fun of JMMA for you. You know, you don't get that kind of shit in the UFC. But anyway, this one was pretty straightforward. Plan from Hinotori is basically take him down, ground and pound. So that's what happened all 3 rounds. So starting in round 1, Jae Hoon Lee has some pretty good takedown defense at first. And whenever he got taken down, he had some sort of answer in the submission grappling department. So he had a Kimura trap that he had and tried to get a sweep from Hinotori, but not much else. I think what happened is that he ended up getting just really gassed, and Jae Hoon Lee, that is. And Hinotori just kept going. So for round 2, Hinotori just double legged him immediately, ground and pound. And Jae Hoon Lee was, in my opinion, kind of accepting bottom very willingly. And I think it's a byproduct of just being very, very gassed. You know, I've been there in jiu-jitsu. Sometimes you just don't have it. I mean, obviously the consequences in MMA are much higher, right? Because you're getting hit. But I know what it's like to feel like, oh shit, I'm completely out of fuel. So it's no fun. Round 3, Jae Hoon Lee was able to rally a little bit, so I think he got taken down and was able to end up in close guard. And he shot up for a triangle attempt, which I think he gassed out his legs. He just didn't have the right angle. He was basically like completely square with him instead of like doing the, you know, hooking the leg and getting that better angle for the strangulation. So he gassed out his legs, but then he didn't give up there. He actually switched to an armbar attempt as well. But as soon as Hinotori got out of that, Hinotori just kept doing his thing. Just, I'm going to beat you up and stay on top. And that's exactly what happened. And I think, yeah, Hinotori took his back in mid to late round 3 and ended up flattening him out. Normally, you know, you see a lot of rear naked chokes from there where you're on top and they're completely flat on their stomach. But Hinotori just kept throwing unanswered strikes and got a TKO finish over Jae Hoon Lee, who was making his RIZIN debut. But unfortunately, he loses to his opponent on short notice, Hinotori. All right, moving on. All right, so to start off the card, on RIZIN.TV, we had this kickboxing match between Kojiro Shiba versus Haruto. I don't know why RIZIN does kickboxing matches. It's like when K1 does like MMA matches. It's just kind of weird. It's like, why not just, you know, not do that or just have a shorter card? But I guess that, you know, they just like to stack the event. And this was the opener for RIZIN TV. The matches before this happened on free on YouTube, but I will not be covering those in this video. But yeah, just pretty straightforward. Haruto came into this, I think he was 3 pounds over. And because of that, he had a 2-point deduction in the scorecards if he were to go to the scorecards. This was just pretty straightforward kickboxing, you know, close rounds. I think after round 1, they were just feeling each other out. There were some leg kicks, some exchanges here and there. I honestly couldn't even score round 1. I didn't know who won that. Same with round 2. But given that they were, you know, 2 rounds that were very, very competitive, but Haruto came into this with point penalties due to missing weight by 3 pounds. I was leaning towards Shiba the whole time. For round 3, they had some more exchanges. I think they turned up the urgency a little bit, see if they could get a finish, but this went to decision. And we had Kojiro Shiba get a unanimous decision win over Haruto. I do believe that it was actually the points that yielded this outcome. I think if Haruto had made weight, he probably would have got some sort of split decision here. Just overall, I think he probably did more. But, you know, when you come in with that penalty, you got to deal with the consequences. So that is it. We've done the full rundown of the card. Let me switch back here. One thing I did want to mention was some of the announcements they had during an intermission. So they finally announced that there's going to be a card in October, and that'll be in Nagasaki on October 3rd. I forget which one that was. probably a landmark one. And then on November 8th, they're going to have a card in Chiba, which is the prefecture that's to the east of where Tokyo is. Um, they also announced that in 2 days from now, on the 20th, they're going to announce the entire card for Ryzen Super Ryzen 5, which will be in September. And then the August card is Ryzen 54, which I think most of the fights are out already. So it sounds like Danny Sabatello said he wants to fight again in September, so he might be defending in Super Ryzen 5. So that'll be super exciting. So I will probably cover this in much more detail in my news roundup episodes that I do every now and then. So be on the lookout for that. But yeah, man, really great event. I thought we had a lot of finishes. The Oshima knee bar really sticks out to me. I just thought that was so slick and it was quick. Just came out of nowhere. So real good stuff from Ryzen. So the next event will be Ryzen 54. Let me see the date here. Yep, Ryzen 54, August 11th, 2026 in the Toyota Arena. And we're going to have Kleber Koike versus Kiyoma Akimoto. I think that'll be a really good fight. And it'll be very telling as to who gets to face against the 145-pound champion, Shadow Liev next. Remember, Google him. Keep an eye on that guy. He's freaking awesome. But yeah, aside from that, man, I've been watching a lot of sumo. Day 7 just wrapped up for the Nagoya Basho. I was going to talk about it here, but this video is already way too long. So what I'll do, I'll wait a few more days and put out a sumo video as well. And definitely I'll put out a video once the tournament is over. But aside from that, be on the lookout for a K1 episode. We had a cruiserweight championship between Lucas Achterberg scheduled against Tarzan, Tian Tarzan, but Achterberg had to pull out apparently. So I'll be covering that in more detail, but I like K1 a lot. Keep an eye out for that as well. That's it. Thanks so much for joining. Thanks to all of you that subscribed. I really appreciate every single one of you. I'm just trying my best to cover the Japanese combat sports scene, and I hope that you guys are learning a little bit and enjoying kind of the content that we've been putting out. So that's it. All right. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.